Welcome to another episode of the Be Who You Came to Be podcast. I'm Tara Renze, your host, and I have just an amazing guest on the show today to talk about a lot of different things from authenticity and owning our story. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I really wanted Barb on the podcast to talk about owning our path, owning our story, and that, things don't always happen the way we plan. And I think that society has this notion of life that we are ingrained in from a very young age. That, like, there is an order of events in your life, the way we do things, the way we show up, whether that is, lower level school, middle school, high school, college. And then after that, or what your degree, then maybe you're going to settle down. And then maybe you're going to find a spouse. And then maybe you're going to get a house. And then maybe a couple kids. And, we have this this notion that there's this specific path that we're supposed to be on. And today you're going to find out from Barb that sometimes life happens and our paths get completely derailed. And sometimes it happens at a very, very young age. So I couldn't think of anyone better to really talk about letting go of old narratives of the path that we're supposed to be on. Really, how do we embrace those gifts of change? The resilience that it takes to go through these major life changes and things that we didn't expect. And then knowing that where we're at in life, no matter whether it's good, it's bad, I always say it's exactly where we're supposed to be because we don't plan everything out, but we do get to show up in the spaces that we're in. And that's where we're supposed to be at any given time. So anyway, I want to welcome a colleague, a friend, a fellow speaker, a fellow podcaster, a mom, a wife, a total badass, my friend Barb Betts. Barb, welcome to the show.
Oh my goodness, Tara, this is like a dream come true. I am so honored to be here. I have admired you. Let's talk about you for a minute for years and have just become ingrained in what you talk about and what you speak about because it is in such alignment with my beliefs and what I know I've learned in my time here in this world, in this universe. And I'm so excited to have this conversation because let's just face it, it's not being talked about enough.
It's not. I mean, and I think it's one of the reasons. So when I thought of you and your story, I asked people, about we talk about comparison, and so many times people compare themselves to other people. But one of the answers I get back a lot, more than I should, when I say, "Who do you compare yourself to?" I hear who I thought I would be. And honestly, like, I get, like, emotional, like, I'm getting tears in my eyes thinking about this, who I thought I would be. And I usually grab the person and hug them. I'm like, "Who you are is who you came to be." And here's the thing, being who we came to be means that we're never gonna reach some destination and arrive. It also means there's not a map for us to be like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna depart on this day, and then I'm gonna get here." Like, we're constantly a work in progress. Who we were isn't who we are today, is not who we came to be. And we have to write the story one day at a time. And life throws us some pretty big curveballs that can totally change the trajectory of our success. So let's just dive in. I mean, your story, let's talk about it. It happened when you were 17 and it completely changed your life.
Completely changed my life. So 17 years old, had just graduated high school, had a very serious boyfriend at the time. And very shortly after graduating high school, I took a positive pregnancy test and clearly did not have that on my bingo card. So when you talk about be who you came to be, when you talk about comparing yourself to who you thought you would be, that 17-year-old girl was headed off to college. That 17-year-old girl was going to be an elementary school teacher. That is who she was going to be. That was her
Right.
dream. That was the plan. Her boyfriend at the time was heading off on a Division I college scholarship to play baseball at the University of Oklahoma and pursue his dreams of becoming a professional baseball player. That 17-year-old was not supposed to get pregnant.
Right.
And, I tell the story very specifically of remembering walking into my favorite department store. And instead of standing in the junior section, I was standing in maternity. And I had a very large sweatshirt on covering up what I thought was an absolute into my life and
Right.
into everything that was ever going to be, again, who I thought I was going to be. I thought it was an end to my success that I was never going to be successful. And then the judgment, right? And the
Right.
fear. And I remember standing in the maternity section looking at everyone else staring at me
Right.
and
Being like, "You
thinking,
poor girl."
yeah, you poor girl. Judgment. You're going to amount to nothing. You've ruined your life. You are going to be a statistic as a teenage mom.
Mhm.
And what I really know now is that judgment was coming from inside of me.
Yeah.
I don't know what those people were thinking. They didn't verbalize it. They just stared at me.
Yeah.
And when you face your own judgment of whatever you're judging yourself for, but clearly I was judging myself thinking I was a failure and thinking that I had no path ahead in my life. And we'll talk about all the ways that that is not true, I'm sure. But the long story short is I decided to have that baby. He is now almost 28 years old. And I was 18 when I had him. So I was, pregnant in the summer, turned
How
18 in
far along were you when you found out you were pregnant?
I was very early.
Okay, so it
And
wasn't
the
one of those that you were, like,
n
ignoring it and being like,
no,
"No, it can't be
no.
this." Like
I was very early because long story short, I was on the pill. And so I
mhm.
was very regular. And so I knew something was wrong. So a
Right.
week or two after, I did go through the there's no way. There's no way. There's no way. There's no way. Right. I did go through that denial, but only for a few weeks. So I
And
found out.
then
Now, I'll say I found out through a positive pregnancy test. I didn't go to the doctor for months because I was scared to death to tell
how
anybody.
long did you wait till you told your parents?
I told my boyfriend immediately, and I'll never forget the look on his face. Well, actually, the first person I told was my best friend. Again, no, there was no texting, there was no social media, there was no DMing, so it was a phone
Right. It was
call.
like, "Holy shit, I'm driving
Get
come
over to
over
my
here
house
now."
now. Yeah,
What year was this? Like
this was
90.
96.
Okay. Yeah, like,
And
we're, like, the same age.
yeah, so there was no, notifications. But
Right.
I remember standing in my parents' living room, and I lived on a street where another street dead ended basically into our house. If you didn't make a right or a left, you're coming in our garage. And I remember when I called him and told him to come over, I remember watching his truck drive down that street and
Mhm.
just my anxiety and heart and crying, and I was hysterical and all the things. I remember it like it was yesterday. And honestly though, I don't remember what happened after I told him. I can't really recall that moment. I do remember telling my mom. I remember telling my dad. And then a lot of it's a blur after that. Um, and then, the story goes, he went off to play baseball and pursue his dream.
And where were
He
you living?
I was living with my parents. So I was living in Long Beach.
Where? In Long
Long
Beach,
Beach.
so you were in
Yep.
California. Okay,
I
so
was
he's
at home in
moving
Cal.
halfway across the country.
He went halfway across the country. Yep. And I remember
Where were
telling
you
him
going to where were you supposed to go to college?
I was supposed to go to a community college for 2 years because my parents couldn't afford anything more. And
In
then my
Long Beach?
In Long Beach City
Okay.
College, yep, and then I was gonna transfer to Cal State Long Beach, which is a very much a liberal arts, it's like the education teaching mecca of Southern
Right,
California. It's where
right.
everyone goes, and it happens to be in my backyard. And, so I remember telling his parents, when we told his parents, the first words out of his dad's mouth were, "Are you still gonna go to college?" And I didn't even wait for my boyfriend to answer. I answered and said, he absolutely is going to go to college. This baby needs parents that have, a path in life. But
Right,
again, I marginalized myself in that moment and made it all about, yeah, he's got to go pursue his dream. I'll stay here and let mine crumble in my hands.
right.
And so he went off to college, and I obviously had our son, and then we decided I moved to Oklahoma in my son was born in March, and so baseball season had ended, and then he came home in May like all college students do, and then we spent the summer at home, and then in August we packed up our lives and I moved to Oklahoma with him. Now, fun fact and the excitement or the happiness of the story is my husband and I got married in July that year. So we just celebrated our
It's
27th wedding.
and 19-year-olds. You
We
got
were
married.
18.
You were 18.
We were 18.
You
Yeah.
had a
So
4-month-old.
were 18, had a 4-month-old, and got married. And that is where, when I tell this, I always tell people, no one tried to talk me out of having my son.
Mhm.
People ask me all the time, did you ever think about abortion? Did you ever think about giving him up? Well, I was 17 years old, of course. I think that thought goes through any young
Right.
woman's mind with an unplanned pregnancy, but it stayed there honestly for a second. I never thought more than a second about it. It was a very quick no. And so we decided to have him. And then what my parents did try to talk me out of, which they do not admit to this day, is they tried to talk me out of getting married.
Oh, they
When we
did.
told them we were going to get married, my parents definitely tried. I remember arguing with them. I'm standing in my bathroom with the door shut and arguing with them on the other side of the door.
A classic
And
teenage move.
yeah, and right. Yeah, I was still a teenager, right? So we got married in July and moved to Oklahoma in August, and we just started our life together. And the happiness of the ending of the story is that we have been married 27 years. We'll be 28 shortly after my son turns 28. You see how this goes, right? It was
Yes.
really fun when he was 10 years old and figured that out. I'll never forget his 10th birthday. And he was like, Mom, how long have you guys been married? And I'm like, 9 years. He goes, when will it be 10? I go, in July. And he goes, am I the baby in the pictures? And I'm like, yeah, son, you are. It was just a moment I'll always remember of him figuring it out. And so, yeah, we've been happily married, very happily married. He's my best friend for 27 years. Our son is extremely successful. I am successful. So everything I told myself in that maternity department was wrong.
Was a lie.
It was a lie,
untrue.
a complete lie.
And if you would have believed it and not continue to show up for yourself, it could have been a truth.
1,000%.
Right.
And so that's why, my mantra, you mentioned it earlier, when I speak on this topic and I talk about this authentic relationship we have with ourselves. So I speak in front of sales audiences and leadership audiences, and I talk a lot about how do we build real relationships with others and with ourselves. And my number one mantra is you can't have an authentic relationship with anyone else till you have one with yourself. And I learned that through this 17 moment. So I call them 17 moments. And I talk about how every single person listening to this podcast right now, including the two that are speaking, have had a 17 moment in your life, a moment where you questioned everything, a moment where you felt derailed, set back, put back up against a wall. What you thought was going to happen with your life took a right or a left turn and went down a path you did not plan on. And let's face it, you can have more than one 17 moment in your life. I've had actually 3 very identifiable moments where I questioned everything. I questioned, am I worthy? Do I belong here? Am I successful? Am I going to amount to anything? Am I ever going to recover from this?
Right.
And the thing that I learned through my teenage pregnancy and then my other 2 big identifying 17 moments in my life is that these moments, so we always talk about, I hate when people talk about their successes. And don't get me wrong, we should all celebrate our successes
Right.
and they're a big deal.
Right.
But you don't learn anything from success. You learn everything from your 17 moments.
Mm-hmm.
You learn who you are. You learn your strengths. You learn things about yourself that you never knew. You learn, and I also believe, refine yourself through these 17 moments, right?
Right.
It doesn't, I'd be careful. I don't want to say these moments define you.
They don't. I was just thinking that same thing. Like a 17 moment, like you were not defined by a teenage pregnancy.
No,
What defined you was how you lived your life
exactly.
by having a baby as a teenage mom, and then how you move forward. Because I'm sitting here listening to this story, and I remember, I didn't have my first child till I was 30. My husband and I did get married. We were in our early, 23, 24. But we worked for 7 years and like really built our careers. And, I had my first child at 30, my second at 32, and having 2 kids at that point in time, it felt like it derailed my career. I mean, I was like, who am I? What am I doing? And I pulled back and ended up changing my career up totally. And I'd be lying to the audience right now if I told you I did not have moments of resentment towards my husband getting to continue his career and doing all the things. And it wasn't that I didn't wanna be, that I didn't wanna change my career, because I actually realized through a series of, like, going back to work and then quitting in, like, 8 weeks, being like, "Oh my god, this is not who I am anymore." Like, I have fundamentally changed as a woman, and I am not a corporate career woman anymore. Like, I had to face that truth for myself, but there was still these, like, rose-colored glasses of nostalgia of like, "Oh, but remember when Tara was the high-powered executive with, the sexy career, and now I'm home, like, washing bottles and wiping butts," but I had to always remind myself, it's like, "This is what I want." But when we put ourselves and who we came to be, and I don't wanna say we put it on hold, because it's part of being who we came to be, but when we give ourselves this different path, I think it is hard to be resentful. And so let's talk about that a little bit, because I'm sure that, I mean, you put everything on the line and supported your husband to go to college, to get the degree, and for you to say like, "Hey, I wanna raise this baby." Like, how was that? I mean, that had to have been, like, that had to have been hard, especially as a young girl.
It was extremely hard because this young girl was always straight A student, driven, goal focused, path, career. I'm in the ecosystem of understanding who you are. I know that I'm what in this, personality assessment that I've taken in life. I'm global, which means I can see retirement. I can see way far into the future. And so I knew what my path was supposed to be. And I say that very
Right.
clearly, right? Because that was the path I had defined for myself. And so that's why I say these 17 moments don't define you, they refine you, right?
Mhm.
They help you become, to your point, who you are meant to be. But back to that boyfriend, at the time husband, who was pursuing his dream, right? Living the college life, playing Division One sports. I'm sitting in an apartment in Norman, Oklahoma with a baby.
Boomer sooner, by the way.
Boomer sooner all day long. And so, and I remember being very resentful.
Uh-huh.
I remember being resentful, not that he was going to college or pursuing his dreams. I was resentful on the days where he didn't take it seriously. I was very resentful on the days that he blew off class to go do something else. I was very resentful when he wasn't taking his education seriously. I wasn't
Right.
resentful about baseball. I was resentful about education because I wanted more than anything to be going to school.
Mhm.
And at that time in the 90s, there was no online school. So people
Right.
ask me all the time, well, why didn't you get your degree online? I'm like, it was 1997.
Yes.
There
Let
was
me take
no
you back to
on
the '90s. Like,
there was no online school. There was no remote
we didn't
learning.
have cell phones. I mean,
Yeah.
early cell phones, but no,
Eh,
the BlackBerry hadn't even arrived.
they were the bananas in the car that our moms
Yeah.
had, right?
Yeah.
The big giant phones with the giant antenna bigger than our head. I hope
Yeah.
that
The
visual is
Zach
coming back for
Morris.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? And also, I had no income to pay for daycare or a babysitter. We
How
were
were you
live
guys who was funding you?
Family help and Pell Grants and because he could get different money than most students could because we were married, therefore we were automatically deemed independent, even though,
Mhm.
right? So most college students can't get a ton of free money because of the incomes their parents make, right? At least that's where my children fell in. But we could, regardless of what our parents made, because we were deemed independent because we were married. So
Right.
we got a ton of government money and state money and all the things. And girl, I was on WIC. And I don't know if anybody knows what WIC is, Women, Infant, Children. And it is essentially Medi-Cal, Medicaid, government money for formula, bread, cereal, peanut butter.
Could you not stay on your parents' insurance?
I was on my parents' health
Oh, but
insurance,
until you got married
but
probably,
this
right?
but this was food.
Right.
And
Right.
so I remember having to go to the WIC office in Oklahoma with my tail between my legs and feeling so ashamed. But it was the only way we could feed him. I
Right.
mean, it was a struggle. Nothing was
Right.
easy.
Right.
But back to that resentment, I used to get mad at him and I would get really upset and I would say things like, "You are blowing off a free education," because he was on a full scholarship. "You're
Right.
blowing off a free education. And I am sitting here and I want to go to school more than anything in the world and I can't. And that's not fair." And
Right.
I did. I held a lot of resentment for a lot of years.
Yeah.
And,
So, we'll keep going, and then I wanna
I
fast
was gonna
forward to,
say,
like,
just quickly fast forward, I live a dream life now, and I do a lot of cool things. But one thing that we always talk about that he always says to me, and if you've ever met him, which you have, he's a saint.
Yes.
He's
He's
amazing.
such an amazing
He's
man.
my
And let's
best
just talk about
friend.
his character for a minute as an 18-year-old boy.
Oh,
That he stood by you.
he did.
He loved you. He
He did.
loved this baby. And we should talk about how he's gone on to be in the MLB himself. Like it was like your little baseball player was meant to be, and now how he's changing lives and like just the ripple effect of this boy, that started with your husband, and then how you guys raised this amazing young man. So he is an amazing human being. And let's be real. I mean, he was also though a freaking 19, 20-year-old boy. He wanted to go party. Like he wanted to go have fun. Like he also, I mean, this was his 17 moment as much as it was yours, because
Oh,
everyone else
one
was on the baseball team hitting parties, having a good time. And he's like, well, I probably better get home to my wife and kid.
one
I mean,
thousand percent. 1,000%. And it was a 17 moment for him. And down the road, and to this day, he will say, he supports me in every single way possible. Not that he ever didn't back then, but now, all the crazy stuff I want to do, all the traveling I do, all the things I do for speaking. And he always says, it's time for me to support you in your dreams
yeah.
because you put yourself on the back burner for all those years supporting mine.
Yeah. Oh, Barb. So you guys you got him through college. You were a stay-at-home mom. When did that change? When were you like, okay, Barb is back. Like it's time for me to, and I think, if you're listening and you're a mother, here's like one of the falsehoods of motherhood is you think once they get in school, I can get back to myself. No, like once they get in school, it's more parenting and a whole new can of worms because you're dealing with so many things. And then there's the whole, once they get in high school, no, once they get in high school, they need you just as much. And and so for me as a very career driven person who also has put being a wife and a mother always first in my life. And that's, again, I'm not saying that's what everyone should do. That's what works for me and where my values and priorities were and what I wanted to do. And I think that that's something that I've become really clear with as a mom is like, the whole like Heather and I on the last episode that I had a guest on, we were talking about mom guilt. And it's such a terrible way to label it because we shouldn't feel guilty about it. When I realized it's like, it's not guilt, it's sadness because I wanted to be there. I didn't want to miss this. You know, it was just that sadness of like, I can't be in two places at once. And then, the two conflicting people that live in my head of the nurturing mom and wife, but then the hustler who's like, girl, we hustle, like we get shit done, we achieve, we make money, we win. And these two are like, at odds. These two people that make up who Tara Renze is. And so like getting them to get along and have conversations has been a struggle.
Girl, I've lived it. I've lived it.
Yeah.
It's like yin and yang are
Yeah.
constantly at battle, constantly at
Yeah.
battle. Yeah. And the whole, as the story progresses, a lot of things happened. He eventually went into a very short stint in professional baseball, blew out his knee twice, 2 surgeries. That was back before they have all the technology they have now to fix these knees. And so he woke up one day and the surgeon said, it's time to get a job. And so then that moment of me thinking, well, now he's going to be making all this good money and I'm going to go back to school and then
Right.
it's like life gets derailed again. And we both had to wake up and we obviously became adults at 17 years old, but
Right.
we had to wake up and get jobs and figure our life out. And so I started working for his mom and got really good at accounting, and I hate accounting and bookkeeping, but
You
I was
worked in
really,
accounting?
yes,
Oh
I was
God.
a,
That
I
is
was,
not who you came to be, but
I
a
was
great way to
so
figure it
good at
out.
it.
You were good at it.
I
Maybe
was
you
good
need
at
to
it.
I need you
I
to
still
come over
am
and
good at it. Yeah. I think it's the way my strategic brain works. I have a very strategic engineer
not
brain.
me. I'm the
Anyways,
creative person. Everything's a mess.
and then he landed a job, thankfully, a really good job in land surveying through a union. And so that was great because
Were you guys still in Oklahoma or
no,
did you
we had
move?
moved back to California
Okay.
to be close to family because we needed help. By
Yeah.
then I was pregnant again with a second baby. And because we didn't want it, we figured, we started young. We don't want our kids to be a gazillion years apart. We really like each other. Let's do this. So we got pregnant with our daughter. And he was in land surveying, very successful. I, again, couldn't go back to school. I mean, I could have, right? Of course, you always could have, but life was just moving fast. And now I've got
Right.
a 4-year-old and a baby. And
Right.
it's like there isn't a lot of time. And so I got good at bookkeeping. He was really succeeding in his career as a surveyor and in the union. We had bought in a house by then. We bought a home at 23 years old because he got a huge settlement from blowing out his knee, which was great. So again, never imagined. Let's face it. Okay, when you talk about be who you came to be, I never could have bought in a home at 23 years old if our lives didn't go on this path.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I mean, most 23-year-olds cannot buy a home. It's just
Right.
a common
Especially
fact,
today. Right. Yeah. In
especially today.
California.
So, but when you talk about the mom situation, okay, and the guilt, the reason I ended up in sales, the reason I ended up being a real estate agent very early on was not because I love sales. It was because I worked for an awful female human, awful, who did not let me prioritize my children. And she was a mother, by the way. And I will never forget the day when my daughter Mandy was super little and she was very
Where were
ill.
you you were working?
I was working at a printing company as a bookkeeper. Technically they called
Okay.
me the financial officer, which I laugh at now because I'm like, I was not a financial officer. I was a
Right.
bookkeeper. And my daughter was super sick and her pediatrician was like, you either go home with this breathing machine or I'm putting her in the hospital. And I will never forget the day that boss said to me, this is why you should have a nanny. This is what nannies are for. And I was like, excuse me? No, this is what it's called a mom is for. And
Right.
nannies are great for low grade fever, can't go to preschool for the day, has the sniffles, but mom can still go to work. Nannies are
Right.
not for when your child is on the brink of being admitted to the hospital.
Right.
And in that moment, I thought, this is not how I want to raise my children. I
Yeah.
don't want to raise my children in an environment where I have to choose between work and them.
Yeah. I had a similar situation. I had actually hired the full-time nanny because I was like, oh, this is like I remember someone saying like get a nanny, have them come early. You want them there at like 6 so that you can focus on getting up and getting ready for like this is what someone was telling me this. Getting up, getting ready for work, and then make sure they're there, and have dinner and everything. So when you get home at 6 in the evening. So we literally had this like woman in our house 12 hours. And it became very clear to both my husband and I early on that that is not what we wanted. And we it was just different. I was like, why do we have this woman raising our kids? Like this is wild. Like what
Mhm.
are we doing? And I was in Philadelphia at at a work conference doing I can't even remember why I was there, but I remember calling home and the nanny was being so weird and I was like, "I need you to communicate with me." And she was like, just didn't want to communicate with me. I don't know. It was so, and again, I'm saying a lot of it was me, right? I was the problem because I wanted to be there. And I'm sure I was driving this woman crazy. But I fired her from a hotel in Philadelphia because I was like, and it was literally like the moment that I had this realization of like, you've changed. You're clearly don't want to be I called my mom. I was like, "Hey, guess what? I just fired my nanny. I need you to take off school tomorrow." My mom was a teacher because someone needs to be there with the kids. And she's like, "What did you do?" She's like, "Tara, I mean, come on, you can't do stuff like this." I'm like, "Well, it's done."
Well,
So,
I did. Yeah.
yeah. And that's when I realized like I I didn't want to be in a situation where I couldn't do both. And I think that that's where so many women get r- derailed on their career path
Mhm.
is they think it's either or. And I'm here to tell you like you can have a kick-ass career and be a great mom.
Yes, ma'am.
They're not they have no, they can operate as both as individuals and there's no rhyme or reason for one to work or the other, but you have to make decisions in your career that allow you to be that mom and you have to be that type of mom that's going to give yourself permission to say like, "Hey, I don't need my kids they don't need my omnipresence. They need me to be loving, to be available, to be emotionally available, and to not miss the big things."
1,000%. And mic drop in the you can have both.
Yes.
And you and I are both living, breathing proof of that. You can absolutely have both. Do you have to make some hard choices? Yes. May you have to switch careers or switch companies or find an environment that embraces that? And I feel like, let's fast forward 27 years. I do hope and believe in talking to tons of friends that it is different, right?
It
With
is.
remote work and the ability to take Zoom calls and all the things that exist that didn't exist in the early 2000s when I was doing this. And so you can do both. And then you also transition into maybe people that are like you and I that are in sales for ourselves, that are, independent contractors and our own entrepreneurs, and we own our own businesses. You absolutely can have both too. Because I also talk to a lot of women who are in like businesses like you and I are in that struggle with this whole being a mom and being successful too. And I am here to tell
Mhm.
you, as a teenage mom, you can have both. And it is all about the choices you make every day. And it's all about exactly what you said, being there for your children and knowing that you don't have to be at every single thing they do. You don't have to be at every single parade at school. You don't have to
Right.
be at every single baseball game, although I was at 99% of them. But
And
when
that's
I
a
can,
if there's any baseball moms listening, that's a hell of a lot of games. That's like
yes.
65 games a summer.
Oh girl, oh
I know.
girl.
I got a baseball kid, so I get it.
And let's compare that to my daughter though. My daughter was a competitive dancer. And therefore, she only did a handful of competitions a year and 2 shows. So did we
Right.
miss any of those? Absolutely not. She
Right.
didn't play 5,000 baseball games a year like you just mentioned, right?
Right.
So you can have both. It's about prioritizing what's most important to you and then surrounding yourself in an environment and not making excuses for, well, I don't have a job that lets me do that. Well, then go figure out how you're going to build your career and your success, allowing you to be that mom you want to be. You
Right.
have to take ownership of that.
And you have to control the narrative because like you were saying early on, so much of it was just the stuff that you were telling yourself. And, studies have shown that 80% of our thoughts every day, they're negative, they're biased, and they're untrue. Well, we feed ourselves stuff for so long, they become our truths
Yes.
of, well, no one would want to have me work for them. Well, eventually then what happens is you tell yourself that long enough that you actually believe that companies don't want women like you working for them, which is not true. Like there are so many companies out there who want successful women who are driven and they want to give you the equity to be both, but you have to be bold enough to ask for it. To say like, hey, here's where I shine. And this is one thing women do. We dull our light. We play small. We don't apply when we should apply. And we come up with all the reasons why it's not going to work out and we can't be who we came to be versus like, hey, how do I actually control the narrative? Which is, emotional intelligence is it's like, hey, you can be anything you want to be if you believe it. And I'm a firm believer, we get what we believe.
1,000%. Well, women live in this world of being the person we think others want us to be,
Right.
right? That we have to fit into someone else's mold of who they expect us to be. And this is something I have dealt with my entire adult life. And I've had to, again, go back to my 17 moments and realize that person that I think I can't be was that person and did the things and said the things I needed to say and stood up for myself and insert whatever and set a goal and crushed it and got through crummy times. You have to remember that as you go through every season of life, as you go through every moment in your life, as you go through every challenge. And every time you say to yourself, I can't do something, you have to reframe that into who do I need to be? Not that you're being inauthentic, but what steps do I need to take? Which is why something I teach, and I'm really passionate about this, is I teach people, I used to teach in sales, fake it till you make it, right? And I
Right.
realized that's such an inauthentic way to live. Instead, I flipped it to what I really mean, which is act as if, right?
Mhm.
Like, if you want a different life, start living a different life. Don't
Right.
wait for permission. If you want to be a better version of who you are, then start being that person now. If you
Right.
want to be like you and I, you want to be a better speaker, then start embodying what the speakers you admire do and how
Right.
they perform and what they study and how they practice and how they lead generate and all the other things that we have to do in our business. It's like you can be a better version of who you want to be, but you can't change and conform, to your point, to someone else
Yeah.
because that's not who you were designed to be. And
Right.
it's like comparison is the most inauthentic thing we do.
Yeah. Well, and I talk about comparison. We're born to compare. We compare from the minute like we start. which toy do you like better? I mean, kids, we teach kids to compare. And then everyone compares, right? And we get compared against other people our entire life, whether it be for scholarships when we're young, to making a cut on a team, to making, the choir, if you're are you first chair or are you fifth chair in the band? Like, it is like, this is how we do. But when we start comparing our authenticity and like who we are as a human to someone else, it serves no purpose, because I always say, like, you didn't come to be them, you didn't come to be more like them, you came to be you. But what you can do is note that, like, okay, I'm comparing because there's something about this person that's lighting me up in some way. So actually, why not just shift? And this is where we can really start controlling our thoughts and be like, actually, I'm admiring this person. There's something there, right? And it's usually, we're admiring them because very little do we compare ourselves to other people, unless you're a narcissistic ass. Are you like, well, I am so much better than this. Like, very rarely do we compare ourselves and be like, I've got it going on. Look at this idiot. Like, people don't do that. We compare in a negative, small way, where instead we should be admiring that person, be like, gosh, what is it? Like, what do I like about her? What is it that she has that I want? And then, like, I always say, like, you give a woman a compliment and be like, I got to tell you, I've been admiring you. Like, I love what you're doing. She's going to light up and want to help you. Versus if I said, Barb, I compare myself to you all the time, you'd be like, okay,
Well,
you're a
that's
weirdo.
you.
Like,
You really shouldn't. Do you know
go
what
get
goes
some
on in
help. Go
here?
get some help. Um, okay, so I want to talk about. I know we've been chatting for a while, but we got to just keep going with this. But one of the things I say that I think people get confused on is, like, where you are today is exactly where you're supposed to be. And I remember when I lost my dad unexpectedly, and I kept thinking about, because I've always believed this, and I was like, so my dad was supposed to die. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we can't control life and all the shit that happens. And just so you know, you're going to get curveballs. Things aren't going to work out in your favor. People are going to die. Horrible things are going to happen to you. And it's not that those things were meant to happen, but with all those things that happen, where you are today is exactly where you're supposed to be. And I had, like, when I lost my dad, I had to be like, where am I supposed to be right now? I'm supposed to be grieving. I am supposed to be giving myself permission to slow down. Where I'm supposed to be right now is doing what matters most and reevaluating my relationships and my work and all those things because of something that happened. And I think that so many times when bad things happen, we do think, why me? I mean, I'd be lying to you if, when my dad died in his 60s unexpectedly, that there were times I'd be out and about and I'd see, like, some old person smoking and, like, eating cheeseburgers, and I'd be like, how the are you alive? And I'm a human. I'd be like, why me? Like, why him? But again, it's about where you're supposed to be, and then honoring whatever phase that is in your life of, like, grief or setbacks or needing to slow down or maybe needing to speed up because you've gotten a window for acceleration. And I think we do have to honor that. And I think that your story just shows that so much, and your tenacity and your ability to persevere and to control the thoughts and to make this marriage work and to raise these children and really, leading with love. And it's like, all of those decisions got me to where I am today. And, back in 1996, when you were exactly where you were supposed to be, which was living in Norman, raising that baby.
Right.
Even though you were like, it's not where I thought I would be, but it is, based on what happened, where you were supposed to be.
Agreed. And and I think this is where the struggle comes, is like, okay, it's how do we compartmentalize the person, like, or I shouldn't say compartmentalize. How do we continue to be the person that we want to be, thought we would be, but stay in the moment of, I'm where this is the path I'm supposed to be on.
Right.
And I think what I've learned is it comes with a lot of hope and a lot of faith
Yeah.
and a lot of conviction in, there is lessons I am learning right now. There is strengths. Again, this is where our strengths come from. And so why do I have the relationship I have with my children? I do believe it's because I had them at 17 years old.
Right.
I firmly believe that. And there are lessons in why I'm as driven and successful as I am because of things I went through and where I allowed myself to be, to your point, instead of trying to sit in the moments of, I should be a teacher right now. I should be doing this. I should be doing
Mhm.
that. And I think the first time I realized this was, do you remember during the Great Recession, 2007, 8, 9?
Mhm.
How many teachers lost their jobs or got displaced? I don't know if you remember that time period, at least in Southern California. A ton of my friends who graduated high school the same year I did were losing their jobs and getting moved to other schools, and all this drama was happening around them. And I remember thinking to myself, that would be me if I
Yeah.
didn't go down the path that I was designed to go down.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah, when you look at stuff like that, I think back to even just the pandemic of were you on the
I
speaker
wasn't
circuit
speaking.
then?
I was doing more of speaking inside the industry I
Yeah.
came from. Yeah.
I have this saying, "It not working out always works out," and I've seen this happen over and over, and people were like, "Well, what about your dad?" First off, and I'm like, "Well, obviously, it, you're taking this a little out of context, but I will tell you that I don't think I would have pursued my goals of being a speaker and sharing my message if I hadn't suffered that unexpected loss that gave me perspective on who I came to be and how I wanted to live my life. So, yeah, maybe, it sent me on this new path of being who I came to be. But I think back to the pandemic specifically, and like kind of what you were saying, when like who I came to be, which was I'm going to go on stages and speak and do all this stuff. And then the pandemic shut down the world. And it was like, I mean, the world basically said, that's not who you're going to be. And definitely, right? Right. We did not know when it was going to open back up. And I remember, crying on the bed, talking to my husband and like, I don't know what I'm going to be. We joked about, I was like, maybe I should sell real estate. I'd be a great realtor. And he was like, babe, like, I just think about this. And, it was at that rock bottom low of it not working out, of me being like, this is where I'm supposed to be. I mean, I remember telling myself, like, remember, you tell people, like, where you are today is exactly where you're supposed to be. But once I accepted that, like, okay, all this shit has happened, where I'm supposed to be. What does this mean for me? It was honestly the moment that I was like, this is exactly who I came to be. I am doing exactly what it was. I cranked my book out that I had been trying to write for years and literally a matter of months. Like, my conviction behind the message, behind what I was doing became so powerful and clear and driven that it was like, the world shutting down is not going to stop me. And it actually gave me this weird window and permission to be like, I'm going all in on this. Like, I believe this now more than ever because I know who I came to be is not a real estate agent, even though I still think I'd love that. But,
I second that. I
uh,
second that.
um, but so it is, it's like this notion of it not working out always works out. And you think back to you, 17 and not working out, like you were supposed to go to college, you were supposed to do all these things. And that not working out, look how it worked out.
Well, to your point, and this is something that I have carried with me now my entire adult life and into my success. And I know for a fact it's the reason that I'm on the stages I'm on and doing what I'm doing now, is that I had no idea, right? I told you I was going to be a teacher. There was
Right.
no other path I was going to go down until that pregnancy test. I went into bookkeeping, good at it, not for me. Went into sales, turns out I was really good at it. And I was like, why? I don't even like sales. But then I woke up one day and I reframed what I was actually doing. I wasn't in sales. I was educating adults every single day.
Mhm.
Taking someone through a real estate transaction, calling them, letting them know steps that are coming down the road, calling them with a problem or something that went wrong, and then telling them how we're going to fix it. That is education.
Mhm.
Why was I so good at sales? Because I was educating adults every day. Then doors started opening for me in offices where they would ask me to come teach things I was doing. It turns out I was really good at it. Wonder why? It's who I was designed to be. I was designed to be
Mhm.
a teacher and an educator. Once I reframed that just because I'm not a traditional teacher as people see it as a school teacher does not mean I'm not teaching every day. And we both know as keynote speakers, when we stand on that stage and our job is to impact the audience in front of us, that is
Mhm.
education, period.
Yeah. I love that.
And so
People ask
I'm living my dream every day.
Yeah.
it took me a while to realize, you know what? All of this happened to show me that I'm just designed to be a different teacher than I thought I was supposed to be.
Right. And everything that happened got you to where you are today, which is exactly where you're supposed to be. People ask me, they're like, "How did you get started in this?" I'm like, if I really think back to it, and most people don't know this, but I went on scholarship to the University of Kansas in theater and voice. I was a theater major, I was a voice major, I was singing and doing opera and performances, and I had a great scholarship. And at the end of my sophomore year, I was like, I don't want to be on stage. I don't want to be an actress. I don't want to be a singer. This is not who I am. And I think it is interesting, like, because at 18, you're supposed to know what the hell you want to do for the rest of your life. Come on. But it was this part of me that like loved stage, I mean, I'm a person who like music is not just performance. It's about moving people. It's about connecting with their souls and their heart. And every time I go to a Broadway show, I cry even if it's not sad because I'm just like, "Oh my god, I am so moved by what I'm witnessing and what I'm hearing and seeing." And then I actually went into sales and sales leadership, and then I just started doing a bunch of training and all this stuff. And then I, pulled back and I started selling jewelry and helping women design a life they love by saying like, "Hey, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't care whether you work at NASA or sell jewelry. Like, you matter. You have impact, and you're not defined by exactly what you're doing, but how you're showing up and how you're making other people feel." Which was all again just this lead in to getting me exactly where I am today. And it's really wild when you start to connect all the dots of like, wow, this led to this and this and this. And and I think that so many times we don't look back on our paths like that. We think that like, oh, well, this didn't work out and then this didn't work out. And instead it's like, actually, it was all just like prepping you and getting you ready for where you're at. But controlling the narrative is 100% what makes or breaks people.
You have to control the narrative, and through these 17 moments I've had in my life, including my most recent one that actually happened last year, it was I needed to have a major breakdown in my other world so that, and you know this from our private conversations, so that I could free myself up to do what I'm really designed to do, which is impact others from a stage or a
Hmm.
microphone or in front of a workshop or a training,
Hmm.
and truly change their lives. And I couldn't see that while I was still stuck in the other
Yeah.
thing. And
Yeah.
so guess what? I had to go through one of the worst years of my entire career, personally and professionally, and get beat down and stomped on until I finally woke up and realized, wait a minute. This
Yeah.
is so that I can go be who I'm really meant to be and
Yeah.
stop holding on to this identity that I thought I had.
And I think so many times it does take us to get to that lowest of low of like, I mean, all the signs were there, right? Like it was like
All of them
people
were
were
there.
tapping you on your shoulder constantly, like, this isn't who you came to
They were
be.
tapping, then they were punching, then they were kicking, then they were
Yeah.
stomping, and then I'm like,
Yeah.
"Okay, okay, okay.
Okay. I get it. I get it. I get it.
I
Well,
hear
I think
you."
that it is so interesting. When I ask people, be who you came to be, and so many times they're like, I don't know who that is. I'm like, you do. In your heart of hearts, in our heart of hearts, we know. And so many times we're afraid to say it because it sounds wildly audacious. I call them the butterfly goals because you're a big fat hairy caterpillar and you're like, I came to be the butterfly, but no one would ever think I could do that. I'm like, girl, I love that there's a saying, the butterfly is beautiful because the caterpillar was brave. And it's so true. And I'm like, I don't care whether it takes a year or 5 years or 10 years. Like, start moving in that direction. Believe in yourself beyond reason
Yes.
because we all know who we came to be, and so many times we make excuses, and you could have lived your whole life saying, "Well, if I wouldn't have gotten pregnant at 17, my life would look a lot different. I would have done this. I would have done this." But instead, I put everything on hold. I put my life on hold. I put my career on hold. I raised this kid. I followed this man around and just had a chip on your shoulder preaching to your bullshit to yourself about all the things because of this one moment versus being like, that didn't define me. It actually made me who I am today. And I think that that's the beauty of everyone. So if you're listening to this story and you're listening to this podcast or watching the show, reframe your story. And it goes back to the self-awareness and self-regard of like giving yourself a little bit of love and being like, look at all I accomplished because of that 17 moment.
I'm looking at my every good keynote speaker has a whiteboard in their office where they map out and sticky note, and we have all different ways that we create all the content we do.
Yeah.
And I'm
I
making
love the
some,
sticky note method.
yeah, and I'm making, because you can move it around. I'm
I
making
know.
some changes, and I'm literally looking at my board right now. It's a purple sticky note. I'm gonna take a picture of this and send it to Tara after this. It says, "Your 17 moments don't define you; they refine you. You become more of who you are designed to be." Like, that is a statement and pillar point and declaration that I have on this board, because it is the premise of, and that's why you and I are so aligned. And I love it, because it's like, people ask me all the time, and they ask my husband and I all the time, "Do you ever regret getting pregnant at 17 years old?" And here's exactly what I say. I tell people, I would never tell a 17-year-old to get pregnant.
Right.
Absolutely not. However, you bring me a 17-year-old that's pregnant or has a girlfriend who's pregnant, and I will tell them that if you believe in yourself, you are going to be able to live whatever life you want to live. That this is not going to define you. It's going to be hard. There are going to be days that you question everything. Let's face it, every first-time mom has days we question everything. Did you not
Yeah.
have some moments at 32 years old when you had babies that you were a
Oh, yeah.
little like Lulu and
Oh, yeah.
thinking, what am I doing here?
Remind me to tell
Right?
you the story about when I drove my toddlers to the police station once.
Oh
That's another
my
I'll tell that on the show one of these days about when as a mom where you're like, "What in
What
the
I
hell am I
and
doing?"
what I tell them is, and I speak about this in my keynote, is what I want you to know is I was a teenage mom. I should, with air quotes, have been a statistic. We
Mhm.
got married at 18, had a child at 18, had a second child by 22. And we are some of the most successful people that I know.
And your
And
children are.
and we love each other, and we're best friends. And oh, by the way, mentioning my son bought a house across the street from us 5 years
Ugh.
ago. And my daughter is in grad school, and our kids are best friends, and we're best friends with them as adults. And
Yeah.
all of that came out of being a 17-year-old teenage girl finding out she's pregnant. So again, your 17 moment may have just happened last week. It's not the end. Your story is not over.
Right.
But you're in full control of it, meaning what you do next. And that's why I always
Right.
say, own your next move,
Yeah.
right? You may be in a cruddy situations, and there are things that have happened in people's lives that I have to be really careful. I mean, there are things that are life-changing and altering,
Mhm.
but you can always own your next move, period.
Right.
And if
Right.
you own that next move and taking one more step forward into what you're supposed to be and who you're designed to be and what you want to be. Because at the end of the day, we're designed to be somebody, but we also can want to be something else and
Yeah.
make
And
moves
we give
towards being
ourselves
that person.
permission. Again,
Exactly.
who you are today is not who you came to be.
No.
It's like that's the beauty of it all. Well, we just had some tears from Tara here on the Be Who You Came to Be show. Barb, I love you so much. You know, we have to wrap. I feel like
I love you
we could
more. We
talk
could talk
forever.
forever.
But why don't you tell people how to follow you, how to get a hold of you,
Yes.
because they got to follow you.
Yes.
You're so funny on
Oh
Instagram.
my
I
God.
always laugh because you're like your girl Barb, and I'm always
I'm
like, you are
authentic.
so funny. I
Yeah.
love the third person Barb.
Oh my God. So Instagram is my jam. I'm just at Barb Betts, super easy, two B's, BARBBETTS. Website, LinkedIn for thought leadership, but really Instagram is where I like to hang out. I love hanging out in the stories and the DMs. I answer
I
them
know.
all.
Me too.
I love it. I just love seeing the behind the scenes of people's lives and not the perfect polish. And you will see me. You'll learn about my hair loss journey. You'll see me with hair on, with hair off. I have a
Yeah.
birthmark, and I'm about as authentic as they come. And it's because I've learned that people want to do business in life with real humans, and humans aren't
Yeah.
perfect. And so the
Yeah.
more you show up as who you are designed to be, with all
Yeah.
your goodness and your flaws,
Right.
turns out people really, really like it.
They do. Well, Barb, I really, really like you. Thank you so much for being on the Be Who You Came to Be show and podcast. We can't thank you enough for being here. And we might have to have you back to tell the whole hair loss story. And
Yes.
how you own it and your beauty. I mean, if you're listening, you're not looking at Barb, but she's an absolute smoke show
Oh
and
gosh.
gorgeous. And so, anyway, thanks so much for being on the show. We appreciate you. Any final thoughts?
No, just thank you. Thank you for doing what you do and keep inspiring others because you inspire me every day.
Oh, well, keep shining, everyone. Keep shining. Live unapologetically authentic and be who you came to be.